Happiness is not something that happens to you. It is something your brain learns to do, and most brains have never been taught. That one sentence explains more about why you feel the way you feel than almost anything else you will ever hear. Because the reason happiness feels temporary, the reason good days never seem to last, the reason you can have everything going right and still feel that low hum of emptiness underneath it all is not bad luck. It is not your personality. It is that your brain was never trained to hold on to happiness when it arrives. It was only ever trained to scan for what is wrong. I spent months researching everything in this video, reading studies, testing these habits personally, rewriting until every single word was genuinely useful rather than just sounding good. This channel runs purely on the support of people who find real value in what I make. If this video helps you today, even a little, there's a link in the description to buy me a coffee. Not because you have to, but because it allows me to keep making videos like this one instead of spending that time doing something else. Even one coffee means more than you know. But here is what neuroscience has confirmed in the last decade that changes everything. Happiness is not a fixed trait you are born with or without. It is a trainable skill, a set of neural patterns that can be deliberately built through specific, repeated behaviors until staying happy becomes your brain's automatic default rather than its occasional exception. By the end of this video, you are going to know exactly 3 habits that train your brain to stay happy. Not to feel happy once in a while, but to hold on to it, return to it faster, and build a baseline that makes ordinary days feel genuinely good rather than just survivable. And the third habit is the one that will surprise you most. It has nothing to do with positivity or mindset. It is something most people actively avoid because it feels uncomfortable in the moment. But the neuroscience behind it is extraordinary. Stay with me for that one because it is worth every second. Habit number 1, the daily evidence log. The first habit that trains your brain to stay happy is what neuroscientists call positive experience registration. And the most practical form of it is something I call the daily evidence log. Your brain has a negativity bias that causes it to automatically register and store negative experiences more deeply than positive ones. This is not a flaw. It was a survival mechanism that kept your ancestors alive by making threats memorable.
But in modern life, this same bias causes your brain to build an increasingly detailed internal case for why things are hard, why life is difficult, and why happiness is always just out of reach, while simultaneously allowing positive experiences to pass through without leaving a strong neural trace. The daily evidence log directly counters this. It is not a gratitude journal. Gratitude journals ask you what you are thankful for, which often produces the same generic list every time and stops producing a genuine dopamine response within weeks. The evidence log is different. Every evening, you write down 3 specific pieces of evidence that today was worth something. Not that life is good in general, specific evidence from this specific day. One conversation that felt real, one moment where something went right, one thing you did that reflected the person you were trying to become. Researcher Sonja Lyubomirsky at the University of California found that people who recorded specific positive experiences rather than generic gratitude showed significantly stronger improvements in long-term well-being and measurably faster recovery from negative events over time. The specificity is what makes it work. Your brain responds to vivid, concrete memories far more powerfully than abstract appreciation. Here is your action tonight. Before you sleep, write down 3 specific pieces of evidence from today that your life contains something worth holding on to. Not big things, specific things, real moments that actually happened. Do this for 14 consecutive days, and your brain will begin building the neural habit of noticing positive experience before it disappears, rather than only noticing it in retrospect. Now, the next habit works completely differently, and it targets the part of your brain most responsible for how quickly you bounce back after something goes wrong. This one changed everything for me when I understood it. Habit number 2, the recovery ritual. The second habit that trains your brain to stay happy is a deliberate recovery ritual, and it is based on one of the most important findings in resilience neuroscience of the last 20 years. Most people have an accidental recovery process after something bad happens. They stew, they replay, they talk about it repeatedly, they scroll mindlessly, they eat something comforting, they wait for the feeling to pass on its own, and sometimes it does. But the neural pattern they are building through this accidental process is a pattern of passive suffering, waiting for negative states to resolve rather than actively participating in their own return to baseline. Neuroscientist Richard Davidson at the University of Wisconsin found that the speed at which people recover from negative emotional experiences is one of the single strongest predictors of long-term happiness. Not the absence of negative experiences. Everyone has those. The speed of recovery. And the brains of fast recoverers showed a specific pattern of activity,
a deliberate shift of attention towards something engaging, meaningful, or physically activating immediately after the negative event, rather than continued rumination on the event itself. A recovery ritual is a pre-decided sequence of 2 or 3 specific actions you take the moment you notice yourself in a negative emotional spiral. Not whenever you remember to, not when you feel like it, every single time. Because the consistency of the response is what builds the neural pathway. Your brain learns to associate the negative trigger with the recovery response until the recovery becomes increasingly automatic over time. Here is how to build yours. Choose 3 things from this list that feel genuinely accessible to you in a low moment. A 2-minute walk outside, splashing cold water on your face, writing 1 sentence about what you are feeling without judgment, doing 20 jumping jacks, sending 1 genuine message to someone you care about, playing 1 song that reliably shifts your energy. These are not distractions. Each one targets a specific neurochemical. The walk targets cortisol. The cold water triggers the dive reflex and drops your heart rate. The sentence uses affect labeling to reduce amygdala activity. The jumping jacks spike BDNF and dopamine. The message releases oxytocin. The song activates your brain's reward circuitry through familiar auditory pattern recognition. Here is your action today. Write down your personal recovery ritual right now. 3 specific things in a specific order that you will do the next time something pushes you into a negative state. Put it somewhere you will see it, on your phone lock screen, on a sticky note on your desk. The goal is not to never feel bad. The goal is to get faster at returning to okay. And speed of return is a trainable skill. Here is where it gets interesting. Researchers found that people who practiced a consistent recovery ritual for 30 days reduced their average emotional recovery time by up to 40%. Not because their lives got easier, because their brains got faster at finding the way back. Send this to someone who takes days to recover from bad news or a difficult conversation, because they are not weak. They just never learned that recovery is a skill, and skills can be built.
Now, number 3, and I want to be honest with you, when I first came across the research behind this habit, I did not believe it was going to be as powerful as it turned out to be. I almost left it out of this video. I am glad I did not. Before we get to the 3rd habit, let me ask you something that might feel a little uncomfortable. When was the last time something genuinely challenged you, not stressed you, not overwhelmed you, but truly stretched you beyond what felt comfortable and asked something of you that you were not completely sure you could deliver? For most people living modern lives designed around comfort and convenience, the honest answer is not recently. And that absence of challenge is quietly doing something to your brain that most happiness research never talks about. Habit number 3. Deliberate discomfort. Now, everything I have shared so far is important and genuinely works. The daily evidence log retrains your brain to register positive experience before it disappears. The recovery ritual builds speed of return after difficulty. But this 3rd habit, this is the one that creates the foundation everything else sits on, and it is the one most people will resist most strongly. The 3rd habit that trains your brain to stay happy is deliberate discomfort. Intentionally doing something hard, uncomfortable, or challenging on a regular basis. Not because you have to, but because you choose to. This sounds counterintuitive. How does making yourself uncomfortable train your brain to stay happy? Here is the neuroscience. Your brain does not actually produce its deepest and most sustained happiness from comfort. Comfort produces relief, which feels good temporarily. Your brain produces genuine, sustained happiness from something called eudaimonic well-being, the sense of meaning, growth, and capability that comes from doing hard things and discovering you are more capable than you thought. Researchers at Stanford studying long-term happiness found that people who regularly engaged in voluntary challenging activities reported significantly higher baseline happiness and life satisfaction than people whose lives were primarily organized around comfort and ease. Not because hard things feel good while you are doing them, because the person you become by doing hard things feels deeply and sustainably good about who they are. And here is the neuroscience of why this matters for staying happy specifically. Every time you voluntarily face discomfort and move through it, your brain releases a combination of dopamine and norepinephrine that does something very specific. It updates your brain's model of what you can handle. It expands the range of experience your nervous system considers manageable. And a nervous system with a wider range of what it considers manageable is a nervous system that recovers faster, panics less, and maintains a higher baseline emotional state across all of life's ordinary and extraordinary challenges. The opposite is also true. Every time you avoid discomfort to stay comfortable, you slightly narrow your nervous system's range.
Avoidance tells your brain that the avoided thing was genuinely threatening. Here's your action. Choose one deliberately uncomfortable thing to do this week. Not dangerous, not reckless, just genuinely hard. A difficult conversation you have been avoiding. A physical challenge that scares you slightly. A creative project you have been putting off because you are afraid it will not be good enough. A social situation that makes you anxious. A skill you want to learn that requires you to be a beginner in public. Whatever it is, do it this week. Not because it will feel good while you are doing it, because of who you will be on the other side of it. Save this video. These 3 habits that train your brain to stay happy are worth coming back to regularly. Because building a brain that defaults to happiness is not a one-time decision. It is an ongoing practice. And on the days when the old patterns pull you back toward negativity and avoidance, these 3 habits are your way forward.